गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्मा गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्मा तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः।
जय गणेश जय गणेश जय गणेश पाहि मां श्री गणेश रक्ष माम्। शरवण भव पाहि मां कार्तिकेय रक्ष माम्। जय सरस्वती पाहि मां श्री सरस्वती रक्ष माम्। जय गुरु शिव गुरु हरि गुरु राम जगद्गुरु परम गुरु सद्गुरु श्याम। ओम आदि गुरु अद्वैत गुरु आनंद गुरु ओम चिद्गुरु चिद्घन गुरु चिन्मय गुरु ओम। हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे। नमः शिवाय ओम नमः शिवाय ओम। ओम नमो नारायणाय ओम नमो नारायणाय ओम नमो नारायणाय ओम नमो नारायणाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते रामचंद्राय। आंजनेय 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 पाहि मां हनुमन्त 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 रक्ष माम्। दत्तात्रेय 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 पाहि मां दत्तगुरु रक्ष माम्। शंकराचार्य 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 पाहि मां भगवत्पाद रक्ष माम्। गंगाराणी 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 पाहि मां भागीरथी रक्ष माम्। सद्गुरुदेव 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 पाहि मां शिवानंद रक्ष माम्। Hari Om. Today I proceed with the same topic. Same means Socrates, not what I told you. The other day I told you about the trial and death of Socrates. I also told you what the oracle declared. In response to the declaration of the oracle, what Socrates said is meaningful. He said, I know I am ignorant. All along he stresses, know thyself. Know thyself means you must know what you are and what you are doing, and whether what you are doing is right or wrong. You advocate a philosophy which permits you everything under the sun. In short, it means if you can get away with anything, you are right in doing it. Meaning, what we have all along been going by, the traditional morality, the concept of right and wrong, they have no relevance and no meaning in such a context. After all, how do you wish us to behave? The sophists advocate one line of action. You are opposed to it. What do you say to it? And on what grounds? It is very simple. Socrates says, all your conduct should generate from knowledge. What is conduct? The whole of ethics, moral philosophy deals with this only, what is conduct. In one sentence I will tell you, the line of action which you have chosen to perform is conduct. Which you have chosen, I have used the word chosen. That is conduct. You have willfully taken up this course of action, that is conduct. And this should be born of knowledge. This is also knowledge that we are governed by our self-interest. We know very well where our self-interest lies, where it does not lie, and we want to pursue it in an unobstructed manner. This is not knowledge. As he calls it, this is opinion only. Opinion and knowledge are two different things. Opinion is like the shifting sands of a river bed. Knowledge is entirely opposed to this idea. Knowledge also is born of sensory raw material, how you will see at a later date. But knowledge has two very special characteristics to it, and these are universality and objectivity. Knowledge should be both universal and objective. What does it mean? Universal means it should be available everywhere. It should be the same in each man's hands. It should not vary from person to person, from circumstance to circumstance. And it should be objective, meaning it should not depend upon the predilection of the individual, upon the like and dislike of the individual. It has to be what it is, irrespective of the like or dislike of the individual who chooses it. Knowledge should both be universal and objective, and that which is not both universal and objective is not knowledge, it is opinion only. opinion cannot be made a universal yardstick of behavior. This is what Socrates said. What is good to one man should, according to knowledge, be good to all, not to a particular person only. That was his idea of knowledge. Now, Socrates says, why does a man put in evil or wrong behavior? He also says, no man would willingly do evil if he could do good. Look at the saintly gesture of the philosopher. No man would willingly, voluntarily do evil if he could do good, meaning the natural propensity of man is to do good, not to do evil. Then why do men act evilly? This is a very big problem. And he says, if behavior, conduct is born of knowledge, it would be right. Simply put, if you want a man to act in a good way, in a moral way, give him knowledge. In other words, if a man acts wrongly, it is because he lacks knowledge. Give him knowledge and he will act rightly. This, sadly enough, is not very prevalent. Sometimes because of lack of knowledge, a man may be acting evil, but in most cases, he acts evil deliberately and willfully. A drunkard would deliver you and harangue you about the evils of drinking endlessly. But when the appointed time in the evening comes, he must go to the alehouse. He cannot help it. He has to do it. He has the knowledge drinking is evil and yet he is susceptible to it. So even if you apply the corrective of knowledge, a man may not always act rightly. But Socrates thought like this because he was a very saintly inclined person. He was a very saintly person. And he lived also, if a man acts wrongly, it is because he lacks knowledge of the right approach, of the right path. Give him knowledge and he will act rightly. Given knowledge, also men do not act rightly, wisely, goodly. But he insisted upon the cultivation of knowledge and the governance of knowledge in our day-to-day life. Knowledge is virtue. This is the core of Socratic teaching. Knowledge is virtue. As I told you, he says, give knowledge to a man and he will act virtuously. Give the idea of the right course and the man will take to it. All these things are there. He says, knowledge is virtue. If you give knowledge to a man, he will act virtuously and that will be all right. Now, see the whole context. Philosophers, as you saw from Thales down to sophists, were simply physical philosophers. Physical philosophers means they studied only the physical phenomena, the outside world, and wanted to know the real substance, the real truth of the universe or creation. Their gaze was all along concentrated on the outside, on the phenomena. With the sophists, the gaze turned inside and they began looking to what is within man, the problem of knowledge and the problem of conduct. That is what they evaluated. In Socrates, it meets its excellence and he insists upon living a virtuous life. Socrates no doubt appears to be taller than what it truly is in pages of Plato, but Socrates was not building any philosophical system. He had no desire to build a philosophical system. His immediate concern was to restore sanity in man's behavior. The sophists you saw gave us moral anarchy. Do what you like is anarchical situation. This is what the sophists propagated and advocated also. Unabashedly, if you can manage, do what you can. There is no concept of right or wrong. There is no absolute right or wrong. Everything is relative. Relative means measured in terms of your self-interest, your petty interest of the moment, as the situation warrants. His aim was to restore this sense of sanity in human behavior, and therefore, as we study Socrates, we get to know in him what he insisted upon: concept. Concept. What is a concept? Concept, all knowledge, he says, is conceptual. As I have been telling you all along, opinion is not concept. Concept is a thought pattern, which is the element of knowledge and which must partake of the two attributes of universality and objectivity. That is a concept. A concept is a class definition. Now be attentive, which of course you are, but that is my way of talking. Concept is a class concept or definition. What is definition? Definition is the briefest statement telling us all about a particular subject. Now look at the helplessness of the situation. Briefest possible statement telling everything, meaning all details. That is there, but since it is there, definition partakes of the essential attributes of anything which are universally present in a class of objects. This is a bit of logic. Any class of objects, say the class of man, we take the idea of the class of man. All men belong to the class of man. They are supposed to be alike, but we find them to be unlike in every respect. In matter of height, in matter of complexion, in matter of language, food habits, dress, language, everything, culture, they are different. And yet, all men are alike in their essential attributes, meaning rationality and animality. All men, wherever they may be, in whichever age born, whatever his vocation, his language, anything else, he is an animal first, meaning he is subject to the appetites, food, hunger, thirst, gregarious instinct, reproductive desire, all these things are there. All men are animal. Another trait is rationality. All men are rational. All men are thinking beings. In greater or lesser degree, they must think, they must be capable of thinking, they are rational. These two traits are common to all men wherever they are and to whichever race or group they belong to. This is the definition, this is the concept of man. Rationality, animality. All concept, all definition is a class concept, and knowledge, the element of knowledge is a concept. As you have seen, concept remains invariable. All men, wherever they are, must be rational and must be animal. They must all partake of these two attributes. This is the basic element of knowledge about man. So this is what Socrates says, concept should be the basis of knowledge, basis of judgment. Judgment is also the same thing as knowledge. That should be the basis of our knowledge, that is concept. He was insisting upon the establishment of the concept in matters related to conduct, to behavior that we put in life. You have also to mark a very important thing here. All along from Thales, philosophers have been studied the concept of the real. What is the reality? What is the real stuff? Socrates never bothered about these questions. His immediate task was to restore equilibrium, sense of equality in human behavior, and that he wanted to do. And the basic factor to be dealt with is the concept in him. Concept is the basis of knowledge. Concept does not vary, it remains the same. It is universal and objective also. And one very important thing that you have to mark in Socrates here is concept is like the banks to a river. As the banks to a river, what is the role of banks? To govern and regulate the flow of water. That is the role of banks, isn't it? Concepts perform this role. They have a regulative role, not a metaphysical status. Metaphysical status, by now you must be understanding, means the reality. Concepts are regulative in the sense they regulate, guide and govern our conduct, enlighten us on the right approach, on the right nuance of an option. This is the role of concepts in Socrates. Concepts are not the real, meaning knowledge is being. Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma. Brahma is the real. Jnana is being, knowledge is being. This idea is not developed in Socrates. Concept here is only regulative. It governs and guides our conduct so that we may be able to live a wholesome, good life. That alone was his intention and was his desire. That he did. The idea of concept being, the truth being the real, is not available in Socrates, but it is all the same available in Plato, who, as you know, came after Socrates. And it is Plato only who made Socrates immortal. So we have to remember this, that concepts in Socrates have only a regulative role, not a metaphysical role. This was about what we can talk of Socratic philosophy, though as I told you, it is not much of philosophy, not much of a system made, but all the same it has the beginnings of a very mighty system which Plato developed in course of time. You saw, for his disagreement and dissent with the sophists, Socrates had to lay down his life, and that came up eventually, but he announces an eternal truth that good does not depend upon the kindness of any individual or a choice. It stands by itself. It has a majesty of its own, and it is the dignity of man to go by the good and not by the expedient, not by the profitable. This was the Socratic system. If we were to again look at it in a summary manner, as I told you, the central thesis of Socrates is knowledge is virtue. The highest wisdom of life, says Socrates, is the idea of good and evil, the idea of the wisdom of life. If you can distinguish the good from the evil, it is the wisdom of life that you are partaking of in Socratic words. A good living was all that Socrates wanted and advocated, and for this he even laid down his life. You don't have to go into more details of the Socratic dispensation, because all philosophies are born of the situation in which they arise. On the one side, represented by the sophists, is the philosophy of might is right. Deadly opposed to it is the Socratic view, right is might. This struggle between the two camps will go on forever. It continues in each man's life, and that was what Socrates stressed upon. I think our study of Socrates is now over, complete, and we can proceed to the next philosopher, which you all know is Plato. Great. Socrates was born in 469 BC. 469 BC. He lived for 70 years, as I told you. When did he die? 399. You know how to count in the BC year. Good. That is how BC era is calculated. Now, going to Plato, hectic efforts were being made, very hectic efforts to save Socrates somehow. Even the officials had been bribed. Plato was noticed for all this by the opposite party, Two types of parties were there. One is the aristocratic party, which Socrates liked and to which Plato and Crito belonged. But they somehow politically declined in that age, and the Democratic Party got the upper hand. It was the democratic dispensation which put Socrates to death. Plato had been singled out for his efforts to save Socrates, and so, after the death of Socrates, in fact, the death of Socrates was the greatest shock of Plato's life. His friend advised him to leave Athens for a while, so that out of sight, out of mind, he may be able to escape the rigor of vengeance. So Plato left Athens when he was 28 years. Socrates had been put to death by that time, and returned after 12 years when he was 40. For 12 years, he kept journeying in the then known world. It is said he went to Egypt and studied their political and social structure. It is said he came to India also and learned the meditations of the Hindus. But there is no authenticity about these accounts. Anyway, for 12 years he kept on traveling. Traveling, it is rightly said, is a great way to education. During the British colonial rule, when students from our prosperous homes went to England for study, they had to put in what was known the Grand Tour of Europe. It was a part of their syllabus. They had to take a tour of the European countries. And after doing this tour, they were awarded their degree. Nothing educates like travel, as they say. He also kept on traveling for 12 years. He studied the structures of the known societies then, and he had one mission in life. Plato was convinced that it was the riff-raff, the foolish people of society who put Socrates to death. And because the people who happened to rule, they were neither the wisest nor the ablest, they put him to death. Therefore, he put a mission before him in life, that the wisest and the ablest may be searched out in society to do the ruling, and they should govern the country. Kings should be philosophers, and philosophers should be kings. Philosopher is supposed to be a wise man. Only the wise should be permitted to rule, not the non-wise so-called. How to search out the ablest and the wisest in society to do the ruling and to goad them to govern. That was the mission he set for himself in life. And for that, as I told you, his books, the dialogues, he wrote a dialogue, The Republic. The Republic, in which he envisages his theory how to search out the ablest and the wisest in society to do the ruling. The study of the Republic that way is not directly a part of the Western philosophy syllabus. It is taught under another paper in universities, but it shall be taught here. Swami Krishnanand ji the late General Secretary of the Society specifically asked me to teach the Republic also to you. In deference to his wishes, naturally I have been doing it all along, and the Republic also will be taught to you. Because what you read in Plato, his theory of ideas, is in the Republic only. We directly teach the theory of ideas. It shall here be treated as a part of the Republic, which of course it is. In my course of talk with you today, I told you concepts are merely regulative in Socrates and not constitutive. Constitutive and regulative, these two words we should understand. There is this table by my side. The dimensions of this table, its length, its breadth, its height, and all these things, they govern the structure of the table. The material, which is the wood, governs the matter of the object. There are two things, matter and dimension, which we call form. F-O-R-M. Form is a very, very simple word. Shape, also put in ordinary language. It is matter as well as form. These two things, make an object, form and matter. Matter is subject to destruction and dissolution. Whether form is also subject to destruction or dissolution, we will have a look at. And we ordinarily start with the question, this table which is by my side, if we burn it down, it will be reduced to a handful of ashes. Can we make another table? You can't make any other table. It is a very simple question. You can make. How? The material has been burned, the material is gone. Given another material, you can make as many tables as you like. Why? What is the problem? What is the difficulty? Given the, as we say in ordinary language, shape, meaning the dimensions, the measurements of the table. The measurements are with you. They are given to you. You can make any number of tables as you like. The matter comes and goes. The shape, the dimension, the form does not come and go. This is what is proved by this example. The form is abiding, it is real, it is eternal. In Plato, concept is being also, concept is metaphysical reality also, it is the truth also, it abides and it stays, it does not go away with matter. The reality of anything is not the material to it, but the dimensions, the shape, the so-called form of it. The real is the form and not the matter or material. Plato's philosophy is known as the idealistic philosophy. Good enough for today, sufficient until the day is the evil thereof, as Gurudev used to say. When he would get up from his office at about 10:30 or so, he would mostly say, sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. It is from the Bible. Good enough. The evil that we have done is good enough for the day. Tomorrow we will do another quota of evil. Hari Om.